Hi, everybody. Welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. Something strange has happened in the heavens, and I think it's a sign. What you're looking at here is a comet. It's suddenly increased in brightness by a lot, and it's coming at an interesting time. Okay, so we're going to look at this. This recently just happened, and this very same comet seems to be associated with a couple key dates in history that have to do with the Bible. We're also going to look at a supernova that occurred that also seemed to coincide with an important milestone of the Bible, and a couple other things. I'm beginning to believe more and more that when things happen here on Earth, like key events, especially when they have to do with, the gospel, that things happen up in the heavens. And I'm about to show you. I'll show you the dates. I'll show you everything. It's crazy. Um, So stick with me. This is going to be a very interesting one. Um, Before we get into it, I have an update on the Flood the Earth challenge, where we're sharing the Book of Mormon. Oops, I forgot to highlight this. So I guess we'll talk about this first. We have one new report of someone meeting with the missionaries. Now, this was reported to me by Joni from the Joyous Genealogist channel, so make sure to check her out, Joyous Genealogist. That's the name of the channel. Her mom has started meeting with the missionaries, so that brings our total to 57. So we're at a total of 6,188 copies of the Book of Mormon that have been shared, and we have another 3 new people that have joined the challenge, which brings us to 626. So please keep it up. Let's keep driving toward 10,000, and the channel goal is 10 per person. So see if you can get to 10. However you want to share it. Physical copies or using the Gospel Library app, clicking on the share button and texting it or emailing it or whatever. Okay, so let's get back to this. Now, I had actually found this on Flipboard, but I did have somebody that emailed me, Miho, and that person says, "Hey, Jared, I just saw this come up on my YouTube and thought you'd be interested in seeing that this comet is to be seen around the time of the eclipse in 2024. Another sign?" I do believe so. I do. And there's a few, like I said, there's a few interesting things about this comet in particular. So thank you, Miho, for the email. Okay, so before I go into the details of the comet, why are comets in particular? Why would they be interesting to us as we're watching for the signs of the times? I have 2 quotes. They're both from Joseph Smith, where he talks about comets, and I've read these a number of times on the channel, but let's just read them again. This first one is from. This can be found in The Words of Joseph Smith, published in 1980, page 181. Okay, Joseph Smith says, read chapter 24, or Matthew 24, read Matthew 24 chapter and all the prophets. He says, "Then shall they see the sign of the coming of the Son of Man in the clouds of heaven." How are we to see it? Answer, as the lighting up of the morning, of the dawn, of the morning cometh from the east and shineth unto the west. So also is the coming of the Son of Man. Now, by the way, I didn't misspell this. And by the way, this isn't necessarily like a word for word transcription of what he said. This is something that somebody had written down as they were trying to transcribe his talk. So the spelling errors is from that person. That was not me. I just copied and pasted it from the book, The Words of Joseph Smith. Okay. All right, but continuing. The dawning of the morning makes its appearance in the east and moves along it gradually. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be. It will be small at its first appearance and gradually becomes larger until every eye shall see it. Shall the saints understand it? Oh, yes. Paul says so. Shall the wicked understand? Oh, no. They attribute it to a natural cause. They will probably suppose it to be 2 great comets coming in contact with each other. It will be small at first. It will grow larger and larger until it will be all in a blaze, so that every eye shall see it. All right. So that's interesting. So um, it would appear that some will think that it's a comet, right? So anytime that there's a comet that's approaching Earth, especially ones that seem like they're going to be visible to the naked eye, I think that we should keep our eye on that thing, because it very well may not be a comet. It could be the sign of the Son of Man, being Christ himself coming to the earth. Okay, and now this is from Scriptural Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, compiled by Joseph Fielding Smith, page 280. The editor, excuse me, the editor, as well as some others, thinks that Joe Smith has his match at last, because Mr. Redding thinks he has seen the sign of the Son of Man. But I shall use my right and declare that, notwithstanding Mr. Redding may have seen a wonderful appearance in the clouds one morning about sunrise, which is nothing very uncommon in the winter season, he has not seen the sign of the Son of Man as foretold by Jesus. Neither has any man, nor will any man, until after the sun shall have been darkened and the moon bathed in blood. And by the way, for the 1 millionth time, President Hinckley, in the General Conference immediately after 9/11, said that this scripture has been fulfilled, from Joel chapter 2, verses 28 to 32. For the Lord hath not shown me any such sign, and as the prophet saith, so it must be. Surely the Lord God will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants the prophets. From Amos 3:7. Therefore hear this, O earth. The Lord will not come to reign over the righteous in this world in 1843, nor until everything for the bridegroom is ready. Okay, and here's the last one. This is also from Scriptural Teachings of the Prophet Joseph Smith, and this is on pages 286 to 287. Judah must return, which they have. Jerusalem must be rebuilt, which it has. And the temple, which potentially could be the BYU Jerusalem Center. I'm not going to make the argument for this here. That's why I have a playlist for it. Go see my playlist called BYU Jerusalem Center. And water come out from under the temple. And by the way, I've done videos about the Dead Sea being healed. I talked to the first person to have noticed fish down by the Dead Sea, very, very close. And I've done, just look up Dead Sea on my channel. You'll see the videos I've done about that. It seems like this is at least beginning to take place. And the waters of the Dead Sea be healed. It will take some time to rebuild the walls of the city and the temple. And all this must be done before the Son of Man will make his appearance. There will be wars and rumors of wars, signs in the heavens above and on the earth beneath. The sun turned into darkness and the moon to blood. Earthquakes in diverse places, the seas heaving themselves beyond their bounds. Then will appear one grand sign of the Son of Man in heaven. But what will the world do? They will say it is a planet, a comet, etc. See, a comet. But the Son of Man will come as the sign of the Son of Man, which will be as the light of the morning cometh out of the east. Okay? So it would seem that in the beginning phases of the sign of the Son of Man, the world is going to see it, and they're going to be like, oh yeah, that's a comet, that's a planet, that's a whatever. They'll have some theory for it. But it's going to grow brighter and brighter and get to the point where everybody does see it. And I'd imagine it would get to the point where it becomes undeniable what's happening. But there's that interesting part where it says, will the saints know what it is? And the answer is yes. So I don't know if that's just because people will have eyes to see and ears to hear, and they'll be like, yep, that's probably him. Oh, it's getting bigger. Yep, it's definitely him. Or if something will be said in church or whatever, but in some kind of way, the saints will know. Okay, so let's talk about this particular comet. This is from Forbes. Star Wars comet could outburst during 2024 total. Star Wars comet could outburst during 2024 total eclipse, solar eclipse. The giant comet, the size of Halley's Comet, now displaying a weird horseshoe shape, could be visible during the next total solar eclipse. comet 12P Pons Brooks was already on the cusp of being big news on our planet. It orbits the sun every 71 years, but will next get closest to the sun on April 21st, 2024. That's an interesting number of years, by the way, 71, because 70 is usually associated with the nations, right? Um, and so when you add one, it's like adding Christ. He's the one that will be over the nations. So I don't know. That's just an interesting thing. But it'll be next closest to the sun on April 21st, 2024. Okay, so let's go to the calendar. So next year, okay, it said on the 21st. So it's going to be closest to the sun on the 21st that I have highlighted right here. And about 2 weeks before that, on the 8th, that's when we're going to have the solar eclipse, the one that goes over Palmyra and Kirtland and crosses over America, the one that seems to be associated with the one back in 2017 that makes an X over the United States. And that eclipse is going to take place one day after General Conference. So one day after General Conference, the eclipse. 2 weeks after General Conference, this comet will be the closest to the sun. Okay. So interesting timing, but there's more. It's currently being imaged by astrophotographers in the northern hemisphere each night after getting 5 times brighter last week. Now, when was this written? This was written on Pioneer Day on July 24th. So the week before Pioneer Day, 5 times brighter, but there's more. A comet in outburst means an unexpected brightening and expansion from the nucleus of the halo. That's caused a lot of excitement among astrophotographers and amateur astronomers who can now see the giant comet in a 6-inch telescope. Last week that was impossible. Pons Brooks' perihelion next year is well timed. Interesting, and maybe there's a reason why it's well timed. Coming just a couple of weeks after North America's total solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024, visible from 14 U.S. states, Mexico, and Canada. It's predicted to reach its brightest when closest to Earth on June 2nd, 2024. So, again, the eclipse on the 8th, and then about 2 weeks later, that's when it's going to be the closest to the sun. And then about a month after that, a month and a week or two, that's when it's going to be the closest to Earth. Okay, at the beginning of June. Interesting to note also is that this is the time of Passover when it's going to be the closest to the sun and when the eclipse happens. So the eclipse is going to happen exactly 2 weeks before Passover starts at sundown on the 22nd of April 2024. And then the perihelion of the comet is going to be 1 day before Passover starts. And then in June, so the date that it said was on June 2nd. So that's this day right here. I'm going to highlight that. And that's just a couple weeks before Shavuot, which is Pentecost, or the Feast of Weeks, also known as the Feast of the Harvest. All right, and this is the feast that's associated with the wheat harvest. Okay, so let's go back here. So it's predicted to reach its brightest when closest to Earth on June 2nd, 2024, when it could reach magnitude plus 4.7. That will make it a naked eye object at night. All right, so that piques my interest because being able to see it without the aid of a telescope, it's a sign. So whether it is the sign of the Son of Man or not, it very well could just be another sign. And I think the more people that are able to observe it, probably the more of a sign it is, or the more important it is. Well, maybe not more important, but anyway. However, it's possible that our first view of Pons Brooks will come in the hours of daylight. During totality, on the April 8th, 2024, on April 8th, 2024, so that's during the eclipse, when day will turn to night as the sun's disk is blocked by a new moon for up to 4 minutes and 27 seconds, Pons Brooks may show up. Now that's even more interesting, that during the eclipse, you may be able to see the Pons Brooks comet. It is very interesting timing. At that moment, it'll be 27 degrees from the sun and close to bright planet Jupiter, which will also be visible. And that's interesting that you'll be able to see Jupiter at that time. Again, in Hebrew, Jupiter is called Zedek, which is righteousness or justice, right? And a lot of people have associated Jupiter with Christ. So, yeah, just very interesting things. Jupiter, the Pons Brook comet, um, and then the comet possibly being able to be seen during totality. I'm assuming if you're in the path of totality, you may be able to see that. It's all very, I don't know, it's very strange, very interesting. It'll be a rare chance to photograph the sun's corona together with a comet. Rare. Quote, it'll be near perihelion in 27 degrees from the solar corona next April the 8th, said solar eclipse cartographer Michael Zeiler at greatamericanaeclipse.com. And then continuing, he says, imagine if it has an outburst during the eclipse. Oh, I guess we'll have to wait and see. Imagine that it's actually Christ coming to the earth. Wouldn't that be something? Okay, I got a couple more things. Now we're going over to an insider article. A Millennium Falcon-shaped comet heading toward Earth is so bright you'll be able to see it with your naked eye, says astronomers. All right, and you can see, I mean, they always do silly things like this, when it comes to astronomy, like, oh, this looks like this or that looks like that, to try and make the article or the news story more interesting. But anyway, here's the comet. Okay, it slightly resembles the Millennium Falcon. Astronomers have spotted a quote-unquote once-in-a-lifetime comet. Yeah, which makes sense because it only comes around once every 71 years. Shaped like the Millennium Falcon, and sky gazers may soon be able to see it for themselves without using a telescope. The comet, known as Comet 12P Pons Brooks, abruptly brightened 100-fold on July 20th. Okay, now that's different from the last article, but this is a more recent article. This article was written, this came out today, actually. But it says on the 20th, it brightened 100-fold. But as of the day that this was written, which was on Pioneer Day, right? Yeah, July 24th. At that time, they were only talking about how it had brightened by a factor. Well, it was 5 times brighter the week before. So 5 times brighter the week before, but later they realized that after that it had actually brightened 100-fold on July 20th. So abruptly brightened 100-fold on July 20th. I put that down. I put it on my Second Coming timeline. So this is actually my most recent entry on the timeline. Comet 12P Pons Brooks abruptly brightens 100-fold. Okay, that seems pretty dramatic. As plumes of debris and ice were blasted off it into space. Well, that's the assumption based on astronomy and their understanding of space. Quote, it's once in a blue moon that you see a comet next to an eclipsed sun. Okay, now talking about how they coincide, the comet and the eclipse. Richard Miles of the British Astronomical Association told Insider. While it may be possible to see the comet with the naked eye, Miles advised using binoculars. Quote, it should be visible. It's guaranteed to get a lot brighter. Just in the normal way, all comets get a lot brighter. What it could also do is have an outburst during the eclipse, he said. Okay, a decades-old mystery. Astronomers aren't sure exactly why Comet 12P Pons Brooks, which orbits the Sun every 71 years, has brightened so drastically in recent weeks. Miles said there may be an active ice volcano on the surface that is causing it to light up the sky. Quote, it's something of a revolutionary idea that you have liquid inside a comet, and scientists have for decades never really come to terms with it, he said. And then continuing, when you see this comet do when you see this comet do what it's doing, you can't really explain it without saying, as well as solids and gases, there are liquids inside the comet, making it behave in this very unusual way, he added. So, I mean, yeah, that could be true. Maybe he's right. Maybe it's some other reason. And it could just be that that reason is that it's not a comet at all. Or we don't really understand what comets are. We think we do. We're able to take pictures of them. Um, but like I've said before many times, I think there's things going on. Well, there are things going on definitely here on Earth that we cannot see. We cannot see the spirit world. We cannot see translated beings unless they reveal themselves, such as the case as the three Nephites. They have to pray to the Father in order to reveal themselves. So there really could be a lot more, even if we're able to take pictures of it and it's like, oh yeah, see, there's nothing there. It's just ice and some rocks. There really might be more there than what we can see with our naked eye. So it's suddenly brightening 100 by 100-fold. It may be something else that's going on. Let's see. And then the last part of this article, it says, this is a quote, at the moment, it is only really visible with a telescope at a nice dark site, but around the time of the eclipse next April, it'll be bright enough to easily find with a pair of binoculars from your back garden, even if you live in the suburbs, said Gomez. Okay, so let's just do a recap. So we have a comet that is inbound. It comes around once every 71 years. That number itself is interesting because 70 represents typically the nations, which is why we have the quorum of the 70. And then you have +1, which would be Christ, right? It's almost like symbolic of Christ coming and ruling the nations. Number two, it's coming at the time of the eclipse. This eclipse that is part of a pair of eclipses that go over very significant church sites. The first eclipse went over Independence, Missouri, which is it's the center place of the New Jerusalem. It also went over Adamandayaman, far west, okay? And it had to take that path in order to cover those. It cannot vary by just a couple miles, otherwise it wouldn't cover, the path of totality would not have covered those sites. And then this one that's happening about 7 years later, it's going over the site of the first vision, as well as Kirtland, which was the first temple of this dispensation, and also a place that Christ appeared. So these are two very, in my mind, very LDS oriented eclipses. I feel like the message it's for the world, but we especially should be paying attention to it, being members of the church. We're also talking about this eclipse that's coming up in October, which is going to go through Utah. So yet another eclipse that seems to be sending a message to the church specifically, right? And this comet, which just suddenly brightened up by 100 times, is going to be making its appearance around that time. It'll be the closest to the sun on the 21st, and this is happening around the time of April General Conference as well as Passover week. And then the moment when it's going to be closest to Earth is going to be just a couple weeks before, or like a week and a half before Pentecost or Shavuot, the Feast of Weeks, the one feast that's really associated with wheat. If you look up Shavuot and go to images, it's going to be nothing but wheat imagery. Okay, so it's all very, very interesting. It's very, very, very interesting. Now let's go ahead and move on. Did I already read from this one? This is from Scientific American. Quote, comets are known to be unpredictable, says astronomer Gianluca Massi of the Virtual Telescope Project, which is a network of worldwide robotic telescopes. Continuing, he says, a few of them are famous just for these outbursts. End quote. For instance, in 2021, Comet 29P Schwarzmann-Watchman erupted 4 times back to back in such a spectacular show that some astronomers referred to it as a quote unquote super outburst. So it seems like this is a phenomenon that is known with other comets, so it may or may not be anything, but I wanted to be fair and make sure to bring that up. But still, I'm still going to keep it on my tracker. Okay. Just a little bit more about 12P Pons Brooks. Okay. So this comet is a periodic comet with an orbital period of 71 years. It fits the classical definition of a Halley-type comet with 20 years. I guess with a period between 20 to 200 years, and is also one of the brightest known periodic comets. So that's another interesting thing about it, that it's one of the brightest known periodic comets. Now, for some reason, this caught my eye. I was just kind of skimming through this article, and this next part here in the Wikipedia article called Observational History, there were 2 dates that stood out. They just stood out to me. So before 1812, Comet 12P Pons Brooks has been identified as a comet observed in 1385 and in 1457. So I wanted to see if there was anything special about those years, and it turns out that there is. First, we're going to look at 1385, and that just happens to be the year of the Wycliffe Bible. Okay, meaning, let me just read it. Wycliffe's Bible, WYC, is the name now given to a group of Bible translations into Middle English that were made under the direction of English theologian John Wycliffe. They represent the first translation of the entire Bible into English. They appeared over a period from approximately 1382 to 1395. So again, the year in question is 1385. So just 3 years after this first date here. So I thought that was interesting that within this time frame, this comet was seen. But the next year was 1457, and so that brings us to Gutenberg Bible. Okay, Johann Gutenberg's Bible is probably the most famous Bible in the world. It is the earliest full-scale work printed in Europe using movable type. Gutenberg's invention allowed the mass production of books for the first time and changed the world. Before Gutenberg, every book outside of Asia, where some printed books had been produced much earlier, had to be copied by hand. Now it was possible to speed up the process without sacrificing quality. His invention did not make him rich, but it laid the foundation for the commercial mass production of books, which subsequently meant that books soon became cheaper and available to a much broader spectrum of society. The Gutenberg Bible was printed in Mainz in 1455 by Johann Gutenberg and his associates, Johann Fust and Peter Schoeffer. Only 48 copies are known to have survived, of which 12 are printed on vellum and 36 on paper. 20 are complete, 2 of them at the British Library, 1 printed on paper, and 1 printed on vellum. Okay, so you have that, but you're like, well, that was 1455, and the date that we're looking at is 1457, which was 2 years later. Well, there's more. On Christianity.com, Gutenberg's First Bible, ? Is the title. It says here, today Gutenberg's few surviving Bibles are worth millions of dollars. And yet we don't know for sure when his first Bible was published. Some almanacs say it happened on this day, March 22nd, 1457. 1457. So that's according to some almanacs. However, that date has difficulties because copies already existed when Fust sued him in 1455. And then this is kind of brought up again. This is patch.com. Today in history, Gutenberg Bible was printed in 1457. Although scholars disagree on the exact date, March 22nd, 1455 is known as the day the Gutenberg Bible became the first printed book. So there is some debate as to when it actually occurred, but it's interesting that the 2 big ones are 1455 and 1457. 1457 being the year that the Ponsbrook Comet was observed. So either way, even if it's not the exact year, okay, this happened around the same time that these big things happened with the Bible. First, starting with the translation into English or Middle English, and then secondly, the first printed Bibles by Gutenberg. That's weird. That's interesting. I'm not going to just like shrug that off. I think that it corresponds. You know, these events with the Bible and the appearance of the comet. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the I was about to say comments below. I'm having a hard time speaking this morning. I don't know why. I got a good night of sleep. Let me know what you think and if you have any other observations. But I have a couple more things for you here. But I mean, isn't that interesting? You know, and it's this same comet that showed up around the time of these milestones in the Bible's history. This same comet is going to be coming in 2024 at the time of the Great American Eclipse. And what was it again? It was like exactly, I think it was it 1 week? No, 2 weeks after conference. It's going to be closest to Earth on a Sunday, on the 21st. Whenever I see 21, I always think of 3 sevens, 777, because 3 times 7 is 21. But I don't know. It's just so many interesting things going along with that. Okay, now let's talk about something different. Let's move away from the Ponsbrook comet and let's start talking about the King James version of the Bible. This was actually going to be a separate video, but I had kind of shelved it because I was moving on to other things. But this was the perfect video to bring this up. Okay, so the King James Version of the Bible. Let's read a little bit about this and another very interesting thing that happened in the heavens at the time that this was being put together, that this was happening. Okay, so by June 30th, 1604, James had approved, referring of course to King James, had approved a list of 54 revisers, although extant records show that 47 scholars actually participated. The new Bible was published in 1611. But the process began in 1604. You know what else happened in 1604? Staying on the same website, Britannica, Kepler's Nova. Let's read a little bit about this. Kepler's Nova, also called Kepler's Star or Kepler's Supernova, one of the few supernovae, violent star explosions known to have occurred in the Milky Way galaxy. Jan Bronowski, Johannes Kepler's assistant, first observed the phenomenon on October 1604. Let's go back to the King James Version. June 30th, 1604. That's when the project for the King James Version, which is the official version that our church uses, that's when he initially started this project, or gave it the green light. 1604, the same year. And look, it was just so this was observed just a couple months later, because here it says June 30th, and then in October, that's when Jan Bronowski observed the supernova. Kepler studied it until early 1606, when the supernova was no longer visible to the unaided eye. So this was something that you could see with the naked eye. At its greatest apparent magnitude, about negative 2.5, the exploding star was brighter than Jupiter. No stellar remnant is known to exist, though traces of nebulosity are observable at the position of the supernova. Like Tycho's nova, Kepler's served at the time as evidence of the mutability of the stars. Now, I didn't research, going back to Pons Brook, I didn't go far enough to find out if, like, when they were able to see the comet in 1385 and 1457, if they were able to see it with the naked eye or if they were using telescopes. In fact, let me just see if I can. No, it doesn't mention anything here. So I don't know if they could see it with the naked eye or not with the Pons Brooks comet, but with the Kepler nova, they were able to see it without telescopes. And I guess, and then it was first observed 1604, same time that the King James Version was underway with its translation. Okay, and then the last thing that I want to touch on here, and this is one that I've already covered before. In fact, I did a video just about Betelgeuse, the star Betelgeuse. It's the brightest star in the Orion constellation. It's the 10th brightest star in the sky, but as of right now, it's mysteriously brightened, and now it's the 7th brightest star. So do a search for Betelgeuse on my channel, and you can see very, very interesting things with the Betelgeuse star. But I just wanted to bring this one example up. Okay, so, and people have questioned this because I put this event that I'm about to talk about on my timeline. Let me go down to here. I'll have to zoom out first and then go down. Okay, here it is. You see this column right here, column F, the Great Dimming from November 2019 until March 2020. Well, I noticed a correlation between Betelgeuse dimming and the COVID-19 pandemic. And I put this day down. I did correct it. Because initially the information that I had is that it began in November, but I've revised that because I found a better source. So it started on the 12th of December of 2019. Okay. And Betelgeuse dimmed the month before, or began its dimming, the great dimming. So let's read from these articles. This is from Fox 17 West Michigan, a look at COVID-19's 2 years since it was first detected. According to this and other websites, it says on December 12th, 2019, a cluster of patients in Wuhan, China began to experience strange respiratory symptoms, leaving medical professionals puzzled as to what it could be. We now know that they were the first patients with COVID-19. Um, and the CDC confirms that as well. CDC Museum COVID-19 timeline. And the very first entry that they have on here was December 12th, 2019, referencing the same cluster of patients. Okay. So that's what I'm putting down as the beginning of the pandemic. Even though it had not been declared a pandemic on day one, this is where and when it began. So interestingly, just a month before this is when Betelgeuse dimmed in the sky. The 10th brightest star, typically the 10th brightest star in the sky, dimmed. Okay. Here, here I have a paper that's on Nature Journal. It says a dusty veil shading Betelgeuse during its great dimming. And the best that I can find is that it happened in November. That's when it started. It just simply says from November 2019 to March 2020, and I haven't been able to find anything more specific as to the exact date that they noted that it was dimming. Okay, but still, it's interesting that it's within that time frame. And what makes it even more interesting, as though that's not interesting enough, that the pandemic and Betelgeuse dimming happens at roughly the same time. Even more interesting than that is when the Great Dimming ended, okay, which again, I don't have an exact date, but it was in March. And what happened in March? Well, there were three pretty key things that happened with our church. So first, you have the angel Moroni that dropped his trumpet due to an earthquake in Magna, which is in the western part of the Salt Lake Valley. That earthquake caused the angel Moroni to drop his trumpet. For anyone with eyes to see and ears to hear, that's a pretty obvious symbol that something has happened, that the Lord is trying to say something, because the Salt Lake Temple is like the flagship temple of the church. When you think of church headquarters, you typically don't think of the church office building or the administration building or the Joseph Smith Memorial Building or even the tabernacle or even the conference center. You usually think about the Salt Lake Temple. So, and this came just a week after there was this big protest by BYU students at church headquarters where they were protesting BYU's honor code, because they were shooting for these different goals for the LGBTQ community. So, this group of people, again, in the same frame of mind, thinking that protesting and forcing your will on other people, that's the way to get things done in the world. And I guess that they think that that's how the church works too. So they did that, and then a week later, this happened. Angel Moroni dropped his trumpet. And the obvious symbol of that is that an angel who's blowing his trumpet to warn the world, to wake them up, right? This is equivalent to missionary work. Whenever we read in Revelation, I think it's chapter 14, verse 6, and it's talking about an angel flying through the heavens, warning the earth. That scripture is the most. Let's just read it. Okay, let's just read it. I'm having some issues today. Okay, Revelation. Okay, I've done this before. Let me zoom in here. So I'm on the scripture citation index. And you can see here all the chapters of the book of Revelation. There's 22 chapters. The book that is the most cited is chapter 14 with 543 citations. So by far, this chapter is cited the most in General Conference. So let's click on chapter 14. And out of all the verses in chapter 14, the one that's quoted the most is verse 6, with 259, just verse 6 by itself, but then another 120 if you include verses 6 and 7, and then another 2 if you include verses 6 through 8. And no other verse in this chapter comes close. So, what is that verse? Let's just go here. Okay. And I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. Okay, so, and I'm not going to look it up now, but there have been uh, prophets and apostles that have talked about that this angel being referred to here, is the angel Moroni, because he's the one that uh, brought about the Book of Mormon, that gave the gold plates to Joseph Smith for him to translate. All right. And what's interesting, as we're thinking about the angel Moroni dropping his trumpet, let's see what it says in verse 8. So after this first angel flies in the midst of heaven, declaring the gospel and so on and so forth. In verse 8 it says, And there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. So, I don't know. When we're thinking about this, it gives you the impression that if this is a message, the message is that the time of preaching is over, the time of warning. Now, of course, we're still doing missionary work, but the main part of it very well could be over with at this point. And now we're shifting our focus toward the millennium and the great harvest that's going to come when Christ comes. So, and like I've said, especially in the previous video, I think that's why there was a big call out for missionaries April of 2022. So this happened. And there's like different places on the internet where you can see people talking about, it looks like the angel Moroni is looking at his watch. This is on 9gag. It says, we're close to the end of the world when Angel Moroni starts checking his watch. I saw this said in like a BYU, like BYU's like campus, news or whatever. I think it was in an article there that someone had made a similar statement, because I think they were going around being like, "Hey, what do you think about what happened with the Angel Moroni?" And one person said, "If you look at him, it looks like he's looking at his watch." So you may think that it's silly. It's like, no, he's not looking at his watch. Uh, it, they wouldn't have had that in mind when it doesn't matter. What matters is the eye of the beholder. If people are perceiving, even though they know he's not looking at his watch, if it puts that idea in their minds, it serves its purpose. It communicates something. There's a lot, I think, being communicated right here. It doesn't matter if you can explain it. The Lord works through natural means. So saying, oh, well, it was an earthquake, that's what happened. It's not like he just like miraculously. It doesn't have to be miraculous in a supernatural sense. The Lord works through science. And in that case, he caused an earthquake to happen at a very pivotal time as the pandemic is starting to ramp up and enter the United States. And look what happens 2 days after this. So this was on the 18th of March, and 2 days later, on the 20th, you see that right there, the 20th. This is on the church's website, church newsroom. From the First Presidency. My dear brothers and sisters, we take very seriously the health and safety of our missionaries and of those they teach. The rapidly developing travel advisories and restrictions that are emerging around the world present significant logistical and other challenges. Therefore, the following temporary adjustments are being made. In coming weeks, based upon world conditions, substantial numbers of missionaries will likely need to be returned to their home nations to continue their service. Um, Later, the term of service for missionaries returning to or serving within the United States will likely be reduced to accommodate the large number of missionaries returning from around the world. Uh, Missionary training centers worldwide will not receive new missionaries. So, um, this symbol of the gospel being preached throughout the world, uh, as described in the book of Revelation, warning the world about the second coming. In real life, the missionaries, the missionary work was reduced. It continued, but it was greatly, greatly reduced. But not only that, not only was it missionary work, it was also the temples. And in the case of temples, it was completely reduced. It was completely halted. First Presidency temporarily closes all temples. This is the Fort Collins, Colorado temple. Very nice. Dear brothers and sisters, after careful and prayerful consideration and with a desire to be responsible global citizens, we have decided to suspend all temple activity church-wide at the end of the day on March 25th, 2020. So, this is 5 days after the missionary announcement. Um, but when did they? Okay, whatever. Okay. We have decided to suspend all temple activity church-wide. Okay. This is a temporary adjustment, and we look forward to the day when temples will reopen. Please be assured of our sincere love and appreciation for your devotion and faith. Sincerely, the First Presidency. So, this was an unprecedented event, something that hadn't happened before, and something that the Lord allowed Satan to accomplish. Satan has his time to work. He has his time to influence the nations of the world. And he did so to the point where it actually halted, uh, for the most part, missionary work, but completely temple work. So if there was ever a milestone as far as Satan and his power and how far he can go, that was probably the height of it. Maybe we'll see worse. I don't know. But this was very significant. And like someone mentioned before, other things were halted too, like patriarchal blessings being given, and so on and so forth, at least for a time. Yeah, so this, it seems, associated with this great star, the star Betelgeuse, the right shoulder of Orion, of the Orion constellation. It dimmed. It dimmed from the beginning of the pandemic until March, the month that these three things happened. Very strange. And then let me show you one other thing. I already covered this in another video. Okay, so this is recently. This is this year. In April. Okay, let me take the highlight off. So April of this year, the month of General Conference, Betelgeuse shines 150% its usual brightness, moves from the 10th brightest to the 7th brightest star in the sky, and its bright to dim cycle is now twice as fast as usual. I don't know what that means, but there's a hastening of some sort with its bright to dim cycle, and it's really bright right now, just like the comet Pons Brooks. It just suddenly brightened 100-fold, and Betelgeuse is also shining bright. In fact, I probably should have done this before I started this video, but let me just see if there's any new news with Betelgeuse. No, there's just a lot of like talk about, oh, is Betelgeuse going to go supernova? Of course, according to science, like, of course it will, but it's probably not going to happen in our lifetime. Anyway, it doesn't look like there's any real recent news about its brightness. Here's an article right here, but it looks like one that I've already covered on the channel. This is from The Guardian. It's new territory. Why is Betelgeuse glowing so brightly and behaving so strangely? I don't know. Probably for the same reason that the comet is glowing so brightly and behaving so strangely, and other things too. Probably because of the second coming, most likely. That's my answer. So we'll wrap it up there. If you have any other, stories, any other situations like this that you know of that I haven't covered on the channel, feel free to send it my way. Send me an email. Ideally, that's the best way to share that. And I may just cover it. But it really does seem like we really don't understand space. Like we understand a lot. I know that the science is good for the most part, but science also has its limitations, and science doesn't look for the spiritual aspects of what's happening in the heavens, right? And I think that there is a lot of spiritual happenings that maybe we kind of faintly realize, like right here, we can't really grasp exactly what's going on. We can only guess and speculate, but at some point everything's going to be revealed, and we may be shocked to look back and realize how much was being communicated, or how many things were taking place in the heavens, and what things actually meant as they were happening. So that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it, leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.